Here.
Capstones.
Here.
Rinaldi. Here. Ms. Wolf. Here. Ms. Price. Here. Ms. Rosa. Here. Ms. Eastman. Mr. Maloney.
Here.
Mr. Davidson.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Item D of the agenda. Do we have a motion for the Board of Education regular meeting from September 13th, 2021?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the September 13th, 2021 regular meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Rinaldi. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We had a special board meeting on September 23rd. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the September 23rd, 2021 special meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do we have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Can you check on the attendance for that meeting? I'm not sure we had everybody here.
For the special,
Was it the special or the 13th? We had a full vote. Yeah, I think we had, I know I was absent for one of the special meetings. So I would have to abstain. Okay. Moving on to item E, award recognitions. We are very pleased this evening to talk about our Watertown Para Educator of the Year award for 2020-2021. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Larry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is Viola or Viola Mustafi, are you here?
I know.
How do I say your first name?
You can just say Viola, that's fine.
You sure?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because you got a fantastic story.
I do, you know what, and I have, my name is so hard to say, you can look at it all, it builds up, but everybody has a hard time saying, so just go by Viola.
Well, I am so happy to meet you, and the Board of Education would like to recognize and congratulate you, Watertown's 2021-22 Para Educator of the Year. Ms. Mustafi, you are a dedicated paraprofessional. Focus your attention on the students and staff at Polk Elementary School. And as I understand, you were born in Macedonia and you've come all the way from Macedonia to Oakville to take care of the students as if they were your own family. And what I want everyone to know is Ms. Mustafi ensures that she adds to the success and the happiness of these students each and every day. Coming from Macedonia when you were just school age, she was a first generation of her family to attend school in America. And it was likely those first experiences when she sat in classrooms, maybe not understanding English too well and spending the whole day trying to acclimate, that shaped her passion to work with children. She recalls that it was the teacher's aide who seemed to be always there watching over her and always there to assist her, whether it was learning English, understanding directions, or making friends. These are some of the same contributions Ms. Mustafi makes to the students and the staff at Polk Elementary School each and every day. Always ready with high energy, always ready with creative ideas, takes the initiative in all that she does, which results in seamless support and instruction, whether that be in a classroom, out on the playground, in small groups, or the lunchroom. She describes her journey as a paraprofessional, tackling challenges with students and seeing them to their successes the following way. Quote, no matter how steep the hill, the view from the top is amazing, unquote. Ms. Mustafi is one of the many shining stars who provide support to the students and staff across our district, and I'm so happy on behalf of this board, and we are thrilled to recognize you today as Watertown Public Schools Para Educator of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you. And in addition, we'd also like to recognize this year's recognition of 6 nominees for the Paraeducator of the Year as well. Tight competition. And if you are here this evening, please do come on up. We would like to recognize you. Rovina Cavallo from Swift, Val Klobuchista from Swift, Oceana Roach from Polk, Kathy Pilecki from Judson, Susan Shavanik from Judson, and Susan DeStassi from Watertown High School. If you are here this evening, please come on up. We have a certificate and flower for you.
Moving on to item F, the agenda report from our city council representative, Edward Davidson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. At John Trumbull over the past week, our amazing PTO held the book fair. This was yet another step at returning to some normalcy at JCPS. Our family night was impressive, with over 250 families attending. Students were able to shop with their family members and also enjoy pizza outside. On Friday, our teachers reviewed the expectations for evaluation and have the opportunity to work with grade-level colleagues to set goals for the school year. Our students are working hard to reach the challenge of receiving over 10,500 gotchas, which was set for them after our first reward day. At Judson, on Friday, September 24th, our school community kicked off our STARS program. STARS stands for Students and Teachers Acting Responsible and Safe. Students learned the three major character traits at Judson: respect, responsible, and safe. Each month, we have a STARS assembly where students are celebrated and recognized for being great role models in our school community. Parents may receive a note card throughout the month informing them of all the great work their child is doing at school. The October theme is respect. Throughout the month, we will talk about respect and what it looks like in school. On Monday, October 4th, we kicked off our WIN groups. WIN stands for What I Need and is a daily intervention block that provides students with support in their identified area of improvement. Students may also receive enrichment during this time block. We are excited to offer some enrichment activities, such as independent student book clubs with student leaders, 5th grade book buddies to 3rd grade students, and even independent science and social studies research groups. Thank you to all the teachers for putting in so much time and effort into placing each student with care and diligence to make this 30-minute intervention block relevant and purposeful for our students. Also at Judson, we have trauma-based social emotional services. Through our district partnership with community mental health affiliates, we have the opportunity to provide our students with trauma-based counseling groups during the school day. We are currently identifying students who we feel may benefit from such a group, but we are also looking for parents to request the service should they feel their child would benefit. At Pope, we implement a positive behavior intervention support system. PBIS teaches behavioral expectations in the same manner as any core curriculum subject. PBIS is comprised of rules and routines developed and taught by school staff to proactively teach expectations and reduce problem behaviors so we can be prepared for and remain focused on learning. Educators work together to set clear expectations and create an atmosphere that ensures appropriate behavior by all students and staff. Emphasis is placed on Polk staff and students catching each other, exhibiting appropriate behaviors, and providing recognition through praise and other incentives. Our Be the Change initiative, for which students and staff receive recognition, is part of how this is done. At Pope, we work to exhibit pause, practice mindfulness, act respectfully, work responsibly, and safety first. These key behaviors are taught across all settings in the buildings. Our Halloween bash is back and better than ever. The PTO is going to host an outdoor Halloween party, which will also include a trunk or treat. We're planning for October 22nd with a rain date of 10/29. To add to the merriment, each Polk classroom will also make a scarecrow to display at the event, and we will vote on the designs in different categories like best dressed or most creative. Many thanks to Officer Gorman for this creative idea and to Mrs. Lamprin and him for their help in securing the necessary materials to make this activity happen. At Swift, we are extremely grateful to the members of our Swift PTSO for their continuing generosity. They recently purchased 2 brand new water filling stations, and this week the filling stations were installed. We now have water filling stations available in each part of the building. These filling stations get near constant use and are appreciated by students and staff alike. Our PTSO continues to be open to the needs of our students, and we are always grateful for their support. Representatives from the high school recently met with grade 8 students to give an overview of the opportunities available at our public schools. Students will soon begin the process of planning for their high school classes, and we will help that process by walking them through their choices. It's a very exciting time for them. This past Friday was designated Team Charter Day, and academic team teachers worked with students to develop charters that delineated expectations for both students and staff members of the team. Soon, we will display visual representations of these charters to remind us of what we want our community to be. This charter development is part of the ruler process and part of our social and emotional goals for the year. Dr. Villanueva visited classrooms that day and had the pleasure of watching our students in action. Soon, students will begin to meet in small groups as a part of our Student Success Plan, or SSP, process. The first lesson, designed by our support staff, focuses on developing rapport with the members of the group's future lessons, including managing emotions, developing strong interpersonal skills, peer conflict, and goal setting. Students are assigned by groups of 10 to 12 and meet with their teacher leaders twice monthly. We look forward to starting this program. At Watertown High School, we are so proud of the following 3 students who performed exceptionally well on the National Merit Scholarship qualifying exam. Senior Olivia Eshu is a national semifinalist, one of 17,000 students out of 1,500,000 students who took the test in our country. Seniors Laura Parks and Tori DeStefano are letter of commendation recipients. They are among 34,000 students recognized out of the 1,500,000 in the country. These are excellent and noteworthy academic accomplishments for these 3 students, and they are a result of the students' hard work, dedication, and perseverance in the classroom and with their schoolwork. Rehearsals have begun for our fall play Clue, which is based on the 1985 movie that was in turn based on the popular board game of the same name. We are excited to see students in action on the stage this year, including the role of Wadsworth being played by yours truly, with an actual audience in our auditorium. Performance dates for Clue will be announced soon. The fall athletics season is well underway, and our teams are enjoying fun times and successful moments on the field, courses, and courts. Watertown High School received its 5-year progress report back from the New England Association of Schools and College, and the high school was awarded continued accreditation for the next 5 years. Notably, the high school does not have to complete any special progress reports or 1-year progress reports because the Commission on Public Secondary Schools was pleased with the high school's direction, areas of focus, and work. Grade 12 students have begun to work on their senior capstone projects, which are projects in an area of interest that are completed as a graduation requirement. Students explore subjects related to a future career or think of ways to give back to our community as part of their capstones. Watertown High School teachers have been focusing upon powerful practices for deeper learning for their professional development this year. These 21 instructional practices work to engage students in the classroom, to develop their critical and creative thinking skills, and to prepare students for their life after high school. We look forward to working on these practices throughout this year and next. And finally, the Watertown Transition Academy is off to a great start for the 2021 to 22 year. Students at the WTA are working at community job sites 4 days a week. Currently, the active job sites are Levon's Market, Storm Auto Body, Watertown High School Cafeteria, John Trumbull Primary School, Jimmy's Restaurant, Watertown Auto and Trucks Part, and Gateway Bible Church. While at the site, students learn valuable job skills by completing a variety of tasks, such as cleaning, bussing tables, prepping food, stocking and straightening shelves, and working and playing with preschool children. We cannot thank our community partners enough for providing students with an opportunity to learn and develop job skills. When not at a job site, students participate in a variety of activities related to daily living skills. The activities include cooking, washing dishes, washing and folding laundry, and other household chores. Students have also been practicing filling out personal information for job applications and related employment forms. Students utilize the Princeton's Building Fitness Center 4 days a week with a focus on incorporating exercise into their daily routines for good health. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Does anybody have any questions for Evan tonight? Thank you very much for that excellent reporting. I don't know that there's anything else for you to report. So Superintendent recommendations and report.
Well, Evan did mention something about the high school capstones, and tonight, I don't know if any of you were watching the volleyball game. You saw purple streamers just about everywhere. I see Mr. McCaskey and Ms. Rinaldi in purple there as well. We had one of our students recognize, oh, we've got purple over there. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason, Evan, absolutely. And I've got purple stripes on my blanket. But we were recognizing a family, and so that's what all the purple was about. And it was a very meaningful capstone, and it's great to see students really giving back. And if you're out at field hockey today, you might have seen lots and lots of pink, even some pink wigs. They were also recognizing a very important cause out there. So really, I would have to say the Watertown spirit is in full action here. Our students are actively participating, giving back to the community and thinking about others, which is wonderful. In addition, the PTOs have been busy as well. Book fairs are galore, have been going. Butter braids are on sale, and everybody's super busy, and all sorts of other things are being fundraised at this point. So thank you again to all of our PTOs who volunteer their time to make our schools a wonderful place. Sports, as I mentioned, are up and running. I know at the start, middle of September, I sent out a message about buses. So, so far, our school district has been able to, with every once in a while having to adjust our route here and there, we are okay for arrival and dismissal for buses. We do anticipate in the coming months that middle school sports, we are going to continue to try and keep as many home games as possible so that we don't have to deal with the bus situation. And so your athletic director, Mr. Paul Patricio, will be in contact with you, if not hasn't already, to make sure that we continue that practice, which it's been working very well so far. We had a full day PD day on September 29th, and on that day, our teachers were fully engaged in professional development. We also had our very first curriculum council meeting that day. So it was wonderful to have a turnout of more than 30 people come together to talk about our district vision and where we were going for curriculum. Nothing was set in stone, but we started to just kind of plant the seeds of where we want to go as a district, and we'll be coming back together again in November to continue that work. And also, Mrs. Wilt and I were able to head over to Bethel not too long ago to an advanced workshop space for Manufacturing Appreciation Day. And it was perfect and fitting because, as you know, the Watertown Public Schools and Watertown High School will be partnering with some of our community colleges to continue manufacturing and bringing trades to our school district. And so to be able to be in the shoulder to shoulder, I think we even got a picture with the governor perhaps, and some other people who are really trying to further manufacturing in the state of Connecticut. It was wonderful to see that happening. So hopefully we will be able to expand our program not only in the school district, but also for adult education to utilize really a lot of the companies in the manufacturing places that we have around in this local area. And then the last thing here is actually, and that's it. So thank you. Oh, sorry. There is, yes, and there's one note. So at the very end of our recommendations, we have Miss Linda Lavieri from the Watertown Public School, who has been here for 24 years, and she is retiring. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to her for all of her good work in our kitchen, because she has certainly served with us for a long time. And so I wish her a very, very happy retirement. I know that she's very happy.
Just a note on that, it was listed incorrectly on the agenda under resignations, and should be retired. And we thank her for the thousands of meals she cooked and made for her students over the last 2 decades.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
That is it for now. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Villanueva? Mr. McCarthy?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Just a couple of things in the packet that kind of jumped out at me.
Sure.
The first thing was the safety net at Swift Middle School. I know the recommendation that Ms. Friola is presented was going with the chain link fence versus the net. Makes total sense.
Correct.
Baseball last season was a nightmare. I think 1 or 2 windshields were taken out in the process. Do you have any insight on the lead time to do that? Obviously with, budget management, things like that, making sure we have enough time to make the decision and have it implemented.
Absolutely. So I did put it into our budget for this year. And we also had a donation from Levon's for a portion of it, not for the entire. It's a fairly large item. So when we're a little bit firmer on where we are budget-wise, I will bring it around to the subcommittee so that we can look at some of our larger purchases. Perfect. But it's definitely on there because I heard a lot about those last year.
Yeah, aesthetically not pleasing, functionally not
Yes.
working at all. I also,
Follow up on that, Mr.
Yes.
If you don't mind. I'm just getting concerned because we've seen this on the report multiple weeks, I think months, and I'm just worried that that price at 35 is going to fly if we're not taking action, especially if we've already budgeted for it.
Okay, so that is a possibility, but for now, it seems to be holding firm, so, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, great point. With logistics and everything right now, manufacturing and stuff, it makes sense. The other thing I also just wanted to point out is that in our packet were two bills that were passed in the Hartford legislature that do have, that are really unfunded mandates to the district. And so I just want to point that out to the audience of, as the Watertown School District, focuses on maintaining a lean budget and doing the best we can, we continue to see unexpected costs. And this one was a policy or a bill, two bills effective July 1 of this year that create some changes that I think pass some unfunded mandates down to the school district. I think that Michelle will talk about that at a later date once we understand what the impact is. But since it was in the packet, I wanted to point that out for everybody and encourage board members that haven't read the bill to take a look at it.
Thank you.
And those are, for those who want, in the public that want to look those up, Mr. McCulty was referring to Senate Bill 945, Public Act 21-144, and substitute Senate Bill number 2, Public Act number 21-46. Thank you for bringing that to the public's attention. Any other questions for Dr. Villanueva? Okay, moving on to the agenda, item H, our budget presentation and updates. Ms. Amy Shovel, the Director of Student Services, will present and discuss the Q1 special education or special services. Good evening.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Shovel. One of the key items that, not items, but one of the key goals that we want to make sure in terms of budget and finance, as well as just information in general as a district this year, is as much lead time as possible. And so, Ms. Shovel here, this is a lot of work at the start of the year because a lot's going on. Already has a Q1 kind of update of where we are with special education, in welcoming families, in just where we are for Q1, and then this will set us up nicely for the remainder of the year, so there aren't any surprises as we move through.
Hi everybody, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Amy Shovel, Director of Student Services. And so, like Dr. Villanueva said, this is kind of an update of where we are with our special ed budget so far this year. To kind of give some context already, last spring when I presented on where we were, we had just under 450 students with IEPs in the district. Right now, we have just under 470, so we're already 20 students above where we were last year with IEPs alone. So that might give a little bit of context as to where we are with our budget right now. But to start off with some celebrations for our office, last year, by October of 2020, the district had 8 unanticipated students who had been outplaced since the budget had been adopted. This year, we've only outplaced 2 students since we adopted the budget, so that's a really big win for all of our schools and our districts, because as we're building our continuum of services that we provide here in district, we're able to provide for our students here in district rather than send them out to an outplacement program. In addition, we've been able to bring back 2 students from our out-of-district outplacements, and we're currently struggling to fill some of our para openings, but once all of our para openings are stable and filled, then we have plans to continue to transition another student, so that would be really exciting.
I'd really like to give a shout out to the special education department. Sometimes it feels like things have to get worse to get better, but I have to say, as a long goal of building and expanding our continuum of what we offer here in the district, it's really important, and it's true to our heart that we want our students to be able to be educated here in Watertown. So to be able to say that we brought somebody back to their home community really is a wonderful thing. So shout out to all of you.
Definitely, and I mean, we really value our outplacement partners. They, really do help service our students together as a partnership, but it's really exciting when we can do that in district as well. So to kind of talk about our unanticipated costs that we know of so far this year. So when students go to a magnet or a charter school, the district still has to pay for their special education services. So So far this year, we have about just under $21,000 of unanticipated costs for students who chose to go to a magnet or charter school.
Question on that?
Sure.
So, obviously we budgeted for a certain amount, and this is over and above what we budgeted for?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is students we didn't know about, but they were gonna opt to make that choice. For outplacement, like I mentioned, we did have 2 students who were unanticipated, who were newly outplaced. We did have some offset with the students that returned to district, but we talked a little bit in the committee, the finance committee, that that's still an area that was underfunded. So when the budget was planned for, it wasn't appropriately funded to meet what we already had for students who were outplaced. So that's why it's still an unanticipated cost and overage.
Right, and then again, in previous meetings, we talked a little bit about how much an outplacement actually costs, and it can range anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000 per student, depending on where the outplacement is.
Sure. Michelle, so just quick point of clarification. So with a student that was outplaced at the end of last year, we had already passed our budget for this year. They were outplaced, just so it's clear,
Right.
To the public that
Yes.
something wasn't missed. It was just the time.
Right, and the students were outplaced towards the end of the school year, and so because the budget gets approved earlier than that, that's why they're unanticipated.
Thank you.
No problem, thanks for clarifying that. Our next is the largest kind of area for us is actually our in-district programming. That's where we've seen a really big growth. Like I mentioned, we're already just about 20 students above with IEPs than we were last spring. So we've had a lot of students move to districts recently, and with that, quite a few actually have some pretty intensive needs in regards to medical needs and some other academic needs. So we have some students who may have a one-to-one full-day nurse, and including writing the transportation, medical equipment that we had to purchase, private transportation, some buses added to the district busing due to the increase of students with special needs who are moving to district. We've had to hire 5 additional one-to-one paraprofessionals. Not all of them are currently filled because we are struggling to fill that. So we're working with subs and that kind of thing in the meantime, but actively trying to recruit for those openings. And so that is, once that's filled, that will be another. And then some additional keeper techs through our contract with an advance with CTA. And we do also have some increased contracted service costs. Those are, I'm actually still negotiating that contract with our contractor that provides our PT and OT services, but we're going to have increased costs with that due to the increase of students with IEPs in the district.
Good question.
Yes.
And I know this comes up a lot. I ask it every time, and I still need to ask it.
Sure.
Every year that we budget, we talk about during budget season that we are budgeting in our special services department for unanticipated entrants into our district. We know year after year that new students are going to enter our district, and some may require special education services that we weren't provided prior. So help me understand if these students, how much of the 20 students were above and beyond the unanticipated that we really built into the budget? Because don't we on a yearly basis assume that we're going to have additional students that are going to come into the district as they do every single year? So I'm having trouble understanding how much of this is that's already built into our budget, and how much of these 20 students is above that.
I think you probably have to crunch the numbers on that, but there is some contingency that's added into this. But I do also want to just remind the public as well as the Board of Education that last year the budget was underfunded in our special education lines to a point where for the majority of our budget increase for this year's FY22 budget, that's right, we were in the hole. So one of the biggest goals was to put as much money as we could to special education to at least bring us par to where we were of whatever costs were. And then with that, you had a little bit to know that we were budgeting for next year to potentially absorb a little bit of unanticipated. But by filling that up, that was a good thing because now we're at least par with where we are with actual. And then we know that there may be an anticipated cost, but after doing that, we couldn't do that much more. I mean, we did as best as we could. So, it definitely is, at least it's bringing up to the ground line so that we're going from there as opposed to having to dig out and get to the ground line and then go above that.
So, our total known unanticipated cost to date is, about $680,507, plus the TBD that I mentioned, like I said, we're still
For the entire year.
right, and that's known right now. We do have some expected offsets, like Dr. G said. So, the excess cost grant is where we get reimbursed a portion of our students in, who receive services and it's over a $75,000 threshold. So for those students, we receive a portion of the cost back from the state, of the amount that's over that I believe it's $75,000. From there, we also have our IDEA grant, which is about $408,000. That's actually even a little bit higher than I anticipated, so that was very exciting. And then we did have some built-in contingencies of about $41,000 into our in-district services lines, but we've already eaten that up with it. So those are our expected offsets. I think it's on a later slide, but there are some additional state grants and stipends that are federal grants and stipends that are coming up that I am actively. I'm attending a summit tomorrow to learn more about three of them, and then there is the ARC IDEA grant, which is just open, so I'm going to start working on that grant as well. So we should have some additional offsets to this as well.
Okay, I'm gonna go to questions. I just have one quick one about the excess cost.
Sure.
I'll go to Mrs. Rinaldi. If we have to meet $75,000 worth of services before they'll pay a percentage of the cost for this, that means we are spending 4 or 5 times more per pupil average before the state pays a percentage
Correct.
of the overage.
And they only pay a percentage of the overage, and not of the total amount.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Rinaldi?
I have the unanticipated cost in the in-district programming on the slide before that. For the one-to-one nurse full day, what contracts are they under? Because that's more than our nurses get.
So
Where's that from?
it falls under a contract through the student's insurance that we have to follow.
Even, so that nurse is not part of our nurses union?
No.
And we can't do that. Someone.
So that number as well also includes transportation costs as well. So it's not just the salary of the nurse as well.
What transportation for the nurse? Because there's there's private transportation the next one, yes.
So are you able to discuss or is it?
I don't want to release any student information,
Yeah.
but
Maybe.
so in addition to the known costs,
Sorry.
Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the, on this slide, didn't we incorporate all 3 of these in the existing budget? So wouldn't they're offsets, but they're already in the budget. So if they're unanticipated costs, wouldn't it be above and beyond, right? The offsets are against what we budgeted for. If they're unanticipated, wouldn't they be in addition to this? So it doesn't really offset?
So so excess costs and built-in contingencies were in there, but so I'm explaining that the total of the unanticipated, and then so there is some offsets. In addition, the excess cost is slightly higher, or anticipating slightly higher than we originally planned for in the budget. The IDEA grant is not in the budget, is not planned for in the budget, so that is a true offset. And so will be upcoming grants and.
And we anticipate that excess costs can be a little bit higher because as you heard, we have 20 additional students.
Based on your space on expenses last year, we were conservative at 900,000. Right now, it depends on how much the state funds us over that delta,
Right.
over the 4.5 times. But I would say based on our expenses from last year, I'm thinking that number's probably $1 million, probably $1.1 million potentially. So that's what Nick is saying is that although we have 900,000, there's more that we really want to plan on. We budgeted for fiscal housing to the point 900,000. There would be additional offset costs.
Make them say so. Any other questions from the board? I'm sorry, Kate.
No, that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
So in addition, we do also have some unanticipated costs that aren't finalized. So the ones that I put as known are unanticipated costs that we know are happening. The ones on this slide are ones that we have been notified may be happening, but the students either haven't registered or haven't made their final decisions yet. So the students we know may still be choosing with the district, which may require an additional classroom pair at Hope to support the category 2, an additional nurse and including writing the transportation, at least one more one-on-one paraprofessional, and one additional preschool special education bandwidth monitor. And that's because currently our special ed preschoolers, we have gotten a very large amount of birth and pre-evaluations and early childhood evaluations we're doing. And so our vans are currently full, so if we even just get a couple more, we will have to add another van. Okay, any more questions on this one?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, sorry for all the questions, but if we've got unanticipated costs of $680,507 and potential unanticipated costs of $284,446, we're looking at $960,000 in unanticipated costs. Is that
Potentially, yes.
awesome?
And what my last slide is going to be the whole picture with everything together. So I think it hopefully will help us feel a little bit better once we get to that slide. We kind of told the story first up front. Like Mr. Kowski just said, we have some potential additional $280,446, and that's again that we know of. So unfortunately, there could still be things that come up that we weren't aware of, but this is what we know of potentially adding right now. Just to kind of explain a little bit, as we look at the total numbers at the end, why are there increased out-of-district transportation costs? So as we look at why we're spending so much more this year than last year, I wanted to point out that if COVID didn't change our transportation usage last year, the number that we're projecting to use this year would have been the amount we would have spent last year. We had a lot of students that either had quarantines or school shutdowns and that kind of thing, and so we did, with our private transportation, have some pretty significant reduced costs due to COVID last year. And then also, there were some small savings last year due to, we had a couple of students who were fully virtual last year for the majority of the year, so they didn't need required transportation at all. Again, we also had some out-of-district students who were hybrid in addition to having quarantines and school shutdowns, so they were only attending 2 to 3 days a week, so they only needed transportation versus this year they did 5. And then ESY transportation hadn't been budgeted the previous year because they've been expecting COVID. So those are, as you're kind of looking at some of the transportation costs and the differences, if you could keep that in mind, and that what we're gonna pay for transportation is actually right where we would have been. There are some slight increased costs on the in-district transportation for this year, and that's because we have added one special education van added at Judson to make sure that the students riding specialty transportation have an under 1 hour ride as required by the state guidelines, and appropriately budgeting for ESY transportation this year.
Is that special education van that's not through our own van because we took those off the road, right? That's through our student.
Correct, it's per student, yep. So this is kind of all the numbers all in one place. So if you look, there is our FY21 adopted budget and our FY21 final budget and actual. So you can look at what was planned for last year and then what was actually spent for each line. And then we also have this year's FY22 adopted budget, what we're currently projecting on spending based on our known unanticipated costs, and the delta, the difference between the two. So if you look at the out-of-district line, last year we actually spent $2,944,029. And so if you look at our projected this year, it's actually lower than that. It's $2,793,127. But we have a difference because that was an area that was underfunded in the budget by 215,000. So we're actually still projecting to spend less than what was budgeted for last year, but it's still not what was approved for our final budget this year. So when I talked about funding the lines, that's one of the lines I definitely want to continue to focus on building. Our in-district professional services, this is for students who receive some of our in-district services through contracted services that we're able to partner with here in district. Last year, we actually spent $1,850,287. This year, again, we're projecting $1,737,890. And we have a difference of an overage, actually, for like a positive overage for us of about 193. So that is one of the, I can't speak words, sorry. That is one of the areas that we did try to build in some contingencies in for us ourselves. So that's one of the areas that's going to offset those things that we're seeing. So that's really positive. Our transportation, our actuals last year were $549,772 for out of district, and this year we're projecting $788,516 based on our current students in the transportation. And again, that's just about where we would have been with the regular year last year. And our in-district transportation, actuals was $726,637,000 last year, and our current projected is $600,000, but it was budgeted at $535,000, so that's where we have another $65,000 difference that we're trying to find for. And then for the excess cost grants, we had planned about $900,000 coming back to us from the city, and we're hoping it looks more like what Mark said was 1 to 1.1 million. So I put in 1 million into this rather than the 1.1, again, just to still give us a little bit of wiggle room. Like Mark said, we don't know what the percentage of the percentage is until the state decides they're going to give us that stuff. Like if you look at the notes on the side, the in-district professional services, that line is so high because it also has the offset of the IDEA grant that wasn't planned for, so that's exciting. And like I mentioned, we are hoping to see some additional grants come in. Any questions on this one?
Mr. Tyler.
Thank you for you, Madam Chair. Just, Ms. Shovel, thank you. I think I'm going to just follow on Mr. Mikowski. I'm looking at your FY22 projected column, the 4.8 and the 4.9. Is that based on, so we now have 1 quarter's worth of experience. So you've taken, you gave us what those numbers were. Is that full year projected based on where we varied in quarter number 1?
So that full year is based on all of our knowns. So we've been hunting down our out of district and all of our contractors for their contracts for the year. So we now know who increased their tuition. Not everybody increased their tuition, which was exciting. So all that is known based on all of our students we have in districts right now and where they currently sit. So if they're attending out placements or if they're attending a program in district that has a contracted support. So
Yes, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, one more question. Does that, the wiggle room you talked about, does that account for perhaps a couple of students we're not aware of right now that we may be having to pay for in the next 3 quarters?
So, so when I was saying wiggle room, I just meant like in that budget line item, that's where some of our offsets come out. So that's where, as Mr. Mikowski had pointed out, the total number, it was just under $1 million, was where our overage is based on our plans, but some of those are students that hadn't been planned for. But then as we have those offsets and the known grants, if you look at now our total known projection overage is $249,100. Nope, sorry. That's the difference. Yes, $249,145 is our known overage based on all those kind of contingencies and the grants that we know of that we added in.
But Mr. Flaherty, to your point, we can receive more students
And it
in
would be-
quarters 2, 3, and 4 that would increase this number.
Sorry, yes.
Right. Thank you. And that's, I really appreciate, we're only 12 days into the 2nd quarter, and I appreciate the timeliness of this status report, and I think we'll need to keep at it at the end of the second quarter and all the way through to give the board and this district enough time to make decisions and inform the public and the council and everything. So I thank you, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Spot on. In the second quarter, usually the first week in February, we will know what projected excess costs are. So at that time, we probably have have half the school year with excess costs. We'll know what the excess costs are. And I think that at that point in time, we should let the board write the plan more accordingly. Do we need to go to the town and say, hey, we need more, or are we going to be okay? So you'll know more of the excess costs. It's a big variable. We just don't know. So we'll know about the first week in February.
And it's good that we're looking for it. So,
Quick
thank
question on that. What about the ESSER funding, the part of that can be attributed to, or put towards student services?
So that's that nice line right down there with the big TDD beside it. So you're seeing a lot of red at the moment, but and we've said the word excess cost a lot, but what we don't have any numbers to yet are the ARP IDEA 611, which is brand new. We didn't know we were getting that, so that's going to be federal money. We have the ARP ESSER, which you just mentioned, which we did put money away there in our budget for this year, so that is there, but we did not put that into this table. And we have some possibilities of some stipends that may come out, probably on the smaller size for those stipends, but they will come out as well. So those are not sandwiched into that
It's a
table.
little, I have to be honest, it's a little frustrating because, to hear that, because, we're all very closely watching this, and I echo Mr. Flaherty's point about having this available to us so soon. I know how much work this is for all of you, but, to get the full picture, the board really needs to know about the ESSER funding and the potential. I can see them now at the bottom. It's even smaller on my paper, but it's just important to get that full picture so that we're not, ringing the alarm bells to the point that where we might looking at this in month one already,
Right.
without knowing that some of that ESSER money, our money will cover it and so forth and so on. So I would appreciate that moving forward.
Once we get some approvals.
Yep,
and-
so I'm starting to work on the new IDEA grant now, so hopefully we'll know that's due by November 15th, so we should have that shortly and know the amount that we're gonna get there. And then tomorrow, I'm actually attending a summit that the state is putting on where they're talking about the 3 additional grants and stipends, so it's just because they haven't released it.
And I understand that. But, it's something I've said to every superintendent, and I know we talked about it too, is that when you put a document out like this to board members and to the public, you have to look at it as if that's all anybody knows. And, we have town council members that will look at this and be like, wow, already? Without knowing that there's those other funding that's coming in. So I just wanna make sure that we think about that when we put a document out.
And that's a little bit of perhaps my personality coming out here in our district. I'm extremely conservative when it comes to numbers. And so I try my best not to lead our district to count our chickens where they haven't hatched yet, just in case something falls through and it doesn't show up.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the state.
Absolutely. So even though it looks the way that it does, we do have those potential funding sources that we're pretty certain are coming in clearly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're not ringing the alarm bells as of yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Ms. Scholl, for doing this. Finance is Mr. Izzo's world. So, felt like having a second job. We appreciate all the detail. To echo Mrs. Karate, for me, looking at this, I'd like to see worst case scenario where we are, right? Because here we are just finishing Q1 and given what we went through last year. I would rather we start being able to plan for a worst case scenario and taking the steps that we need to and then end up being okay than having a somewhat false sense of security and then at the 6-month mark being like, what do we do?
But we still need to
Right.
know the whole picture.
And so, and I'd like to add to that picture because we are seeing reports that the mental health needs of our young people is skyrocketing. There are hospitals that don't have enough facilities to hold kids going in for mental health services, right? This is only going to get worse. And I think that if you can leverage your relationships with other school districts, the state, anything that we can do to get some semblance of an idea of where we might be going, will only help us. And it's like having a magic 8-ball. Shake it, and you hope what pops up is correct. But we're seeing the trending, and special education, mental health services has not decreased in the last couple of years. It has only increased. And when we look at the last 18 months and what has happened, it's only going to exacerbate it. So I want to make sure we keep an extra close eye and really get conservative when we anticipate where we might be going, because I personally think we're going to see more than what we think. And I just want to make sure that everybody that needs to be prepared is prepared.
And I think Amy and the administrative team did a really wonderful job in preparation for this year before the school year started.
Agreed.
And a lot of school districts, including all of the leaders, came together and we all said we're anticipating we're going to see an uptick in all of the services to our students, as well as in just, having everybody back in the building again, because we didn't have everybody at the same time. So with that, Amy's team, as well as our administrators, put things in place before the school year started. So CMHA is one where we have 2 people coming in from there. We have somebody who's dedicated to social emotional liaison work, and we also have the special education teams looking at the social emotional needs of our students. We are seeing an uptick. All school districts are seeing an uptick, and one, it just may be because all of our students are back, but I think the uptick is also because we're coming off a really very year of experiences for all of our students. They all experience something very different in a different way, and now they find their safe place at school to be able to find somebody that can help them, find somebody they can talk to, and so we're obviously going to support them and serve them with their here.
If I may, Madam Chair, one other comment, actually 2 comments. So one, as we know, special education and the requirements of the district are governed by the state, right? It's by state statute. It has nothing to do with Watertown Public Schools. There's the moral thing, we want to do the right thing, then there's the legal thing, right? We have to follow those rules. And earlier I mentioned unfunded mandates. Well, they're changing the requirements of, and I don't know the details, but they're dropping the age from 15 to 14 on when we start certain programs, right? I don't know how many more students that adds to the list.
And last year they extended from the top age too as well.
Yeah, so last year they took it from 21 to now your 22nd birthday, and then this year they're dropping to transition services, and so transition services typically start at age 15 for any student with an IEP, and it had been 14 for students with an autism diagnosis, but now they're dropping it to 14 for all students.
So it's just one more thing that our student services department has to manage from an education and operational standpoint, but now also a budget standpoint, right? So it's just the proverbial, keeps piling on. So thank you.
2 more slides.
Yeah, the next one's really important.
So the next one, I feel like this conversation kind of led it in. So I was going to, Dr. Villanueva speak to this one. It's about the different things that we are planning for and have on our plate should we need to.
Sure, you got it. So whenever we start to see unbalanced numbers, or we start to see overages, there are things that we can immediately go to. I'm not showing this slide to say that we're doing this right now, but it's right there at the front of our mind that if we need to, we can do it within a 24-hour time period. So obviously a budget freeze, which would then hold on spending and hiring to help balance our budget. That would mean all accounts in our school district. And as Ms. Schobel was saying, some of our positions right now are still unfilled at this time. So if we go into a freeze before we finish our hiring, that would mean then those positions would go unfilled. Contracted services, where we budget with, or we contract with services like Ed Advance or any of our outplacement providers, or any other type of contracted services out there. I can whittle it right down even to like who we pay for our web page services. We would try to see if we can reallocate or adjust any of the positions or any type of contracts as best as possible. And again, utilize that ARP IDA 611 funding. That is something that was not budgeted for. We didn't even know it was really getting it, so this is a real gift. And then transportation, always looking at transportation because it's one of our largest costs in the district to see if we can reevaluate routes and request for adjustments. I think one of the things that our school district did during the COVID year was we stayed true to our contracts for transportation, where a lot of districts may have tried their best to undercut their transportation companies as best as possible if they could, if they took them to legal type situation. So, even though we were in those COVID times, we kept a good relationship with our transportation companies, and so to be able to go back to conversations and potentially look at how we might make adjustments is always a possibility. It's never a guarantee that we get something from it, but always a possibility.
I just can't help but to mention because it's something that has always, since this happened with COVID, one of the things that was really detrimental to our district is that within the governor's executive order, almost within a month of shutting schools down, he granted in the executive order the transportation companies the privilege of getting their contracts completely paid with a very few exceptions. And we had no choice but to pay almost 74, maybe even closer to 80% of the entire contract for buses that we weren't using. That still continues. And should we ever shut down again, we may find ourselves having to pay a contract that we're not using.
When you say budget freeze, is that just for the special education department or is that for the whole district?
No, it would be for the whole district. We would try to ultimately cost cut every single line item. And it's not recapturing, it's literally cost cutting and ceasing about everything.
Then I last. So this is just kind of to talk about our continued long-term planning. And so as we're talking about these things, I want you guys to know that I am continuously looking at how can we continue to build and plan for our districts so that way we're not finding ourselves in a hole and that we can have appropriately, unanticipated costs come up, but we're already set for it. So as we're looking at that, looking at as we start to build this next year's budget really looking at again pushing to appropriately fund those education lines so that way we're not trying to dig ourselves out of a hole every year like we are with our out-of-district funding program. Again, looking at how we can increase our programming and in-district programs. So working on providing professional learning to our staff and our administration, and working on sleeping funds up front in order to help build for the future. When possible, welcoming students back to the district from any out-of-district placements, and continue to just create models that will support the widest range of students that we can here in our district. So really continuing to build on our continuum of services and what we can do here. Those are kind of long-term goals as we keep moving forward. So, any final questions?
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm stumbling over my words so much. Thank you.
For answering all the questions. Okay, item B. Mr. Montiso, our business manager from Twin Lakes Consulting, is going to present the fiscal year 21 quarter 4 report and this year's quarter 1 report. Dr. Villanueva?
Correct. So quarter 4 is in your packet, and here is a fresh quarter 1.
This is updated from what we received.
You are correct. Or actually, it's my voice. You received it electronically, but it's the same. It's just a hard copy. All right. So Mr. Izzo has been working diligently with Twin Lakes to close out our quarter 4. So quarter 4 is going back into last year, and that ended June 30th. So he's going to just bring us up to speed on where we landed after the appropriation from our town, and then he will bring us up to speed on where we are in quarter 1 now that we are a few days into quarter 2.
Thank you. So, as we know, last year we had our little getting back to the town for a supplemental appropriation. Total budget ended up with working for the year was 49.413. Pending the results of the auditors are going to there's always a couple of adjustments, never anything big. But right now, based on what we see, what we've seen as we close the year out, we'll return about $70,000 to the town right now. Again, the discussion needs to be had whether, I know we have to set up the lapsing fund here. That would be a good place to put it, but there's no hurry. We have to see how you want to close this out first. So the good news is, the bad news is we need the extra money. The good news is, I think the staff, Dr. B, did a really good job. The staff did a really good job managing that. I know the board is very supportive, of going back to the town. It's not something we want to do, we did. And the good news is we didn't underrun, we didn't overrun it, which is good. Good to do that. So right now, I'd say we're about, break even, and possibly returning 70, maybe $100,000 to the town for the end of last year's budget, FY 24. Any questions on that? Go on to FY 22.
Anybody have questions on Q4 from last year? Okay.
Thank you. And I really want to thank, the board. I told the finance committee, I've been through a couple of these rodeos before. Where you're overlooking your budget, the budget special ed. And, I think to a person, this board was very supportive of that. I always found that to be the case. So I truly appreciate that coming in. It's not a good news story, but you handled it very well. And so I appreciate the support. FY 22. Right now we're looking okay. You're going to look at the right-hand column, and you're going to see, we're underwriting our budget. So the thing is, right now we're about $5.5 million. We get that slide up, or is that not loaded?
I don't think it's loaded, but we are looking at.
Okay, you have it.
hard
Okay.
copy.
Okay,
Yep.
fine. So right now we're about 5.5 under, but I don't anticipate we're going to be 5.5 under at the end of the year. We still have some work to do getting encumbrances put in place on the certified staff, uncertified staff, and non-certified staff. We have some dancing around between the accounts, so we'll have to just get those encumbrances done. I don't anticipate, that'll come out with any variances at the end of the year. We should be right on budget. Purchase services, we still have, he mentioned that we still have some contracts to get into place with some of the folks that are finalizing some of the purchase orders, folks that provide those purchase services. So we've done some incremental POs, but we want to get the POs in the system for the year. So we'll get those, work on those now. As far as utilities and facilities, basically we just got to get some additional encumbrances in, purchase orders in for electricity and oil, and the rest of the things will come along as we need them. You get into people transportation. Right now we have all the POs in place. I think for the special ed, so we are showing a little bit of an overrun in people transportation. The tuition right now is under because again we haven't. Believe it or not, a lot of these service providers, they provide you the service, but they don't give you a contract until October. Which I find kind of hard because how would I do work without having a purchase order? But be that's the case with the special ed providers. So we'll get that under control. And then the rest of it, supplies we'll spend as we need. Gina will spend the supplies for custodial maintenance as we go along. So right now, I don't anticipate a problem. We just talked about the special ed. We also talked about, we have mitigating circumstances where I think we'll offset the costs. So as of, go into, head out of the first quarter, we're now in the second quarter. I don't see anything to be too alarmed about. I think it's vigilant watching the special ed, that's a big variable. I think the salaries we have, set, once those are set and locked and loaded, that just runs out the year. So I think we're in good shape. So when you do business manager comes on board here in a couple of weeks, we hope we can enter her a sound budget.
Absolutely. So in terms of the pieces, if I could just add on, Mr. Izzo, to the not encumbered monies.
Separate that out.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
No problem, sorry.
So basically, today I had a meeting even with our cabinet, and I had said to Mr. Fayola, our facilities manager, have you finished encumbering all of the, projects and all the items that you're going to need for this year? And he said, not yet, but they're almost ready to go. So for instance, we know we use electricity, sewer, and water all year long. We have not encumbered all of those in yet, but we know that we're going to use them all year long. So once those numbers start to go in here, you'll see that the encumbered numbers will obviously increase. the actuals continue to accrue until the end, then that will take us to exactly what we budgeted for. And the goal here is to not go over it, and make sure that we utilize everything that we budgeted for.
Right, the goal is gonna be, hopefully, in the next month or so. Again, the staff, again, it's an excellent staff that this is off. It's been an absolute pleasure working with this, with the town, Dr. B and her staff. Nobody says no, nobody says they can't, nobody says they have to go home. So they're working as hard as they can. We just gotta get these purchase orders done. So once we get through this audit, then we'll get purchase orders encumbered. So I'd say in the next month and a half or so, month and a half, with these purchase orders put in place, hopefully sooner. The goal obviously is when you want to see that variance, when that variance is zero, you want everything encumbered as much as you can. So we'll work on that, get the plan to that attack.
Any questions, Mr. Miskowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Rizzo, does this incorporate the discussion we just had in the unanticipated overages?
They will be in the balance, so it does not, it includes some of them, but not all of them. So until Mr. Miskowski has to get all the things encumbered, it won't truly reflect the final story. So we'll bake that in. So all those purchase orders have not been let yet. We need to get those put in place.
So this is based solely off of actual purchase orders. This is, right, this isn't projections off of, okay.
But we want to get to that point where, like I said, when you look at encumbered, we can say to you that that's everything we know about that's under purchase order.
And that's something new in our budget reports, and I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's very helpful.
I think it's a good thing because, again, you don't want any surprises. You all talk about, you don't want any surprises. You want to look at that column. You don't want to see this big variance. Well, they're going to get $5.5 million, but no, we're not. We're going to spend all that money, but you have to obligate it. And that's part of the first source. So we'll work on that.
Any other questions or comments?
So, Mr. Izzo, I don't know if you're going to be with us at our next board meeting. I don't think you will be because I think Ms. Kashuba will be here at that point. So, just on behalf of all of us at Watertown Public Schools, I want to thank you, Mark, as well as David, Joe, and Sue, every single one of you for, we had a single question, we had an audit, we were turning over every single rock and stone, and you helped us go down every single rabbit hole we wanted to investigate. So thank you so very much. You really did bridge that gap for us, and appreciate it so much. And you're super early risers, so that's a wonderful thing.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure serving you. So thank you for the opportunity.
I would like to add to just a couple of things. Dr. Villanueva was really impressed with the agency, and that you've got to sell it to the board, so to speak, right? And everything that she shared and everything that she found in your firm definitely came true. And just the first time we met and talked about things and the work that I know has been going on behind the scenes, it's been extraordinary. It's very rare where a partnership is the way this one was, especially in finance, where everything that you said you would do, you did with integrity and transparency, and at a time where we didn't even know how much we needed to. We really didn't, and I really appreciate it. And just on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on to item I in the agenda, communications. Madam Secretary.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have two letters this evening. Dear Watertown Board of Education, my name is Brian Doer. I have two children in Watertown Public Schools, a third grader at Polk and a seventh grader at Swift. A quick overview on me. I am a biomedical engineer and I've been working in the vaccine and medical device industry for 20 years. I am writing a letter in support of mask mandates in the schools. I felt the need to reach out to the board because of the anti-mask groups seem to have a lot of signs in the area, and now I've been approached by one at my daughter's bus stop, which infuriated me. I don't want to take too much of your time, but allow me to explain why I think masks are the right things for schools. First off, my wife, my son, and I are all vaccinated, but my daughter cannot be yet, as she is 8 years old. As the Delta variant circulates the country, we see more and more children hospitalized, so removing masks from schools puts my daughter at risk. Right now, Connecticut's numbers aren't bad, but they will likely get worse as the weather gets colder and more people congregate inside without masks.
Since there are no mandates in stores, restaurants, and bars, kids will get COVID more, and it will make its way into the schools at some point. Masks are the only protection these younger kids will have. I have seen no evidence of actual negative impacts on the children by wearing masks. Every claim has been debunked by science, and the benefits far outweigh the risks of the masks. I hope that we can get to the point when the masks are not needed, but we are not at that point yet. Thank you for your time, Brian Miller. Another letter. Dear Mrs. Crotty, I have lived in Watertown for over 17 years. I have always found it to be a beautiful place. I am a wife, a mother, and a friend here. I have been a substitute teacher here for years, amongst wonderful staff and educators that I respect and admire. Up until recently, I believe that Watertown is a good place to raise a family, but my opinion has changed, and that is the reason I'm writing to you, and also the reason why I moved my family out of the district at the end of September. Allow me to explain. My child began school at John Trumbull Primary School as a preschooler. It was a fantastic experience, but we have no school photos to reflect on because John Trumbull scheduled their picture day on the same day as a Jewish holiday that my family observes and requires my child in school. The following year, we had a similar experience. I thought it was ironic that it had happened twice in a row. Why was picture day being held on a Jewish holiday that would require students in the community to miss school? I reached out to the superintendent at the time and received no response. When my child was in first grade, her teacher graciously invited me into her classroom to share a Hanukkah story and a craft. After painstakingly preparing a lesson, I excitedly went into school with a huge bag of materials. When the secretary saw the menorah peeking out from the top of my bag, she questioned what I was doing with it, and I explained the reason for my visit. By the time I got to the classroom door, the teacher had received a call from the office telling her that I was not allowed to do my lesson with the class with no further explanation. The teacher was very upset and proceeded to question why this was so, and ultimately I received a call from Mrs. Mecca inviting me to come back. Nevertheless, the feelings that it created have stayed with me. This school year, my child has returned to full in-person learning and was excited to be with her classmates for Picture Day. However, in typical Watertown fashion, Picture Day at Judson was held on Rosh Hashanah, when my child would again not be attending school. I was forced to wonder how a district could repeatedly create this situation and be so inconsiderate of those in the community. So this year, my child missed Picture Day yet again, and upon returning to school, a classmate inquired as to where they had been. My child explained that they were observing the Jewish holiday, which prompted the other student to further ask if we are Jewish. Upon responding yes, the student told my child, well, you shouldn't be living in Watertown then. You can imagine the horror I felt and offense I took to this remark. It's hard enough for a child to be in a minority group, but to be made to feel unwelcome in the only town they've ever known is quite another. It extends far beyond the ramblings of a little child. It comes from the voices heard at home and the growing anti-Semitism in our country. Ultimately, my child's teacher addressed the situation beautifully and made sure my child felt welcome and valued. The teacher shared that she looked forward to meeting me in person at the Judson Open House and the ice cream social. Unfortunately, I had to decline because it was scheduled for the same day as Yom Kippur, the most holy day on the Jewish calendar. This is yet another event we've missed because someone was too ignorant or insensitive to be aware of it. So I ask you, for the sake of others, if you are trying to create a community that is inclusive and accepting, please be sure that your school calendar and your school events are planned in such a way that you include, or at least consider, each facet of your community in your planning. This way, no group feels unwanted, unwelcome, or unaccepted. The anger and contempt that seems to consume the Watertown community as of late has made it a place that I no longer believe is a good environment for my family. It is those feelings that have also led me to remain silent for this long. However, as a parent and a teacher for almost 20 years, I feel strongly that I cannot be alone in my concerns, and I couldn't leave this community without speaking up and asking for a change for those who remain. Finally, for the safety and well-being of my family, I ask that this letter remain in confidence with the Board of Education and the superintendent, and that if portions of this letter are shared publicly, that my name be withheld. Both of these letters were emailed to the Board of Education members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Spinelli. And just a note on the last letter to Mrs. Spinelli's point about the request of confidentiality. We also made sure that the writer was fine with the board reading the letter in its entirety. So thank you for doing that. Moving on to item J, our first round of public participation. If you'd like to address the board, please do so by speaking into the microphone and stating your name and street address for the record.
Krista Palumbo, 9 Cayuga Drive, Watertown, Connecticut. As most of you know, I was on the mascot committee, and
I'm sorry, this is public participation.
okay, yeah, I'm short, sorry. And I fought for Native American education in our school system. And when the mascot committee finished their duties in January, it was our recommendation that we have Native American studies in the Watertown school system. This was important because I feel it was necessary for the healing of our town. And I'm just wondering where we are with the Native American curriculum, because we are still a town very divided. We're still a town who's very hurt. And I think it's very important for you to let us know where we stand with the Native American education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kava. Would you like to provide an update on that at the next board meeting?
I would be happy to. Yep, we had a little update at the curriculum subcommittee meeting, but I'm happy to do a little deeper one.
Please state your name and street address for the record.
Joseph, 70 Alina Drive. I was here at the subcommittee meeting for the curriculum night. So I was listening, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was going to ask, you mentioned something about a curriculum council that is with parents, a parental advisory committee for curriculum council, something like that. Have you already chose those parents for that council? Is that something that's already set in stone, or the parents already chosen for that?
If you'd like to clarify
Would that be all right?
what the advisory council and the curriculum
Sure.
council is made of.
So we have the curriculum council, and then we also have the strategic planning committee. And on the strategic planning committee, which was started a couple of years ago, there is a parent advisory group there. And so, no, it hasn't started yet. We haven't had our first strategic planning committee yet. But if you are someone who's interested in that work, it's going out to the people who already exist on the committee, and then I was planning on to expand that to anyone else who might be interested. I do cap the numbers for the committee, so depending on how many will be returning from that.
So how does that work, like for the future, if anybody else wants to get involved? Do they reach out to you? Is there something that goes out to the town? Or?
Absolutely. So whenever my newsletters go out, I'll always try to put something in there, but we haven't scheduled a meeting yet. But basically just the curriculum council has.
So there are parents already on this board right now?
They are correct, but they have not met in a very long time because it was started.
So the
I think
strategic planning committee was,
ago.
when Dr. Harrison was here, we were redoing the vision of a graduate and going through with the cabinet and administrators and teachers and so forth, all of the different areas of where we wanted to go. There was a few community meetings that were open to the public, and then, so that's the group that she's referring to, kind of reinvigorating that and taking another look at the strategic plan now that we're beyond last year.
Okay. It would be helpful too if you could maybe have like community emails or something like that, or a spot that we could go to maybe look more into that and try to see, more information about it.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good idea because, part of the strategic planning process is to let everybody know where we are in it. It just hasn't started yet.
And one more other question. Are you considering bringing back makerspace into the school districts? Because the kids used to love that. I know that it was kind of gone for a while because of COVID. Do you think that you would see something like that in the future coming back?
Yeah, I can get an update on that. I'll talk to the principal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was, just again,
I
was unaware that the makerspaces.
As was I, so I want to double check with
Because
her
all that was
administrator.
donated.
Right, I just want to double check with her administrator.
I remember my children had mentioned that they didn't get to do any more COVID and touching everything and stuff like that.
Oh, it may have been like a temporary pause from
So let's get an update at the next meeting on
That's
that as well. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board this evening? Okay, there will be another opportunity for public participation for the people that are here later in the meeting. Does anybody in our virtual audience wish to address the board this evening? If so, please signify by pressing the hand button. Okay, one more chance. Does anybody in the virtual audience wish to address the board this evening? Okay, Denise Macklin?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name's Chris Paquin. I live at 161 Claxton Avenue in Watertown. And I want to just say that today is kind of a sad day for the Watertown School District in a certain way. My son, I have two sons. One goes to Swift Middle School, and he came home today to tell me that one of his instructors had requested the students to raise their hand to find out their vaccination status.
There we go.
It's highly inappropriate. It's unprofessional, and I'm not having it. And I don't know why the school board would have it. I don't know why people think it's their business to find out somebody's status. I don't know why a teacher who's supposed to be a professional would ask somebody's status. I'm a fellow employee for the town of Watertown. I could care less of somebody's status. And I want to know what this board's going to do about it, because I'm sick and tired of my kids or other residents have to feel like outcasts here. It's unacceptable. And I would never treat people like that. So I'm just asking for the board to look into the matter because I'm sure it's not an isolated incident. And I just want the board to handle it appropriately, how they see fit. But I want you to know that myself and the other residents in this town are going to be paying attention. We're going to be watching to see how it's dealt with, because this is completely inappropriate and it shall not stand. So I leave that to you. I hope you guys do the right thing. So I appreciate you letting me speak. And I hope it gets taken care of appropriately. Thank you.
Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind me asking.
I don't mind you asking.
Okay, have you reported it to the administration of the school yet?
No, I just found out within the last hour or so, so I have not as of this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly look into that for you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the virtual audience wish to address the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will move on in our agenda to item K, board policies. Item 1 is the third read of the superintendent's recommended third read for policy 6012, teaching and learning of multiple perspectives on current and historical events. The superintendent has included in your packet a recommended revision based on our last discussion, where board members both at the curriculum and instruction committee meeting and at the last board meeting shared their thoughts about that on that policy. Dr. Villanueva, I'll hand that over to you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody from the Board of Education, as well as just our, me being able to sound some things off with just one of our administrators that helps me kind of think through things. But ultimately, I tried my best to keep the essence of the policy intact, and took a lot of the comments that were offered and kind of lined it into the policy here. Again, I just want to reiterate that this really is, if I could sum it all up into that third page that you see there, well, fourth page on this photocopy, of those norms of civility on how we have conversations when we are ultimately embracing all of our learners and sharing ideas about a topic that may have differing opinions. So with that, this is what's presented here, and then I look forward to hearing the discussion this evening.
Do you think, I'd like to have it read into the record if that's possible, since none of the public don't necessarily have your revisions. Is there somebody that would offer to read it into the record for us? So this is the revisions, recommended revisions, the policy 6012.
Do you want me to read,
I think it should be read in its entirety.
so the red too, the black and the red, so everything?
Yeah, unless it's crossed out.
The policy provides guidelines for the teaching and learning of historical and current events using multiple perspectives. Board of Education Policy Statement Overview. The Watertown Board of Education believes the characteristics and skills included as part of the Watertown Public Schools WPS Visions of a Graduate will prepare students to be reflective, brave leaders, continuous learners, and contributing citizens of their local community and larger world. We are committed to providing a safe, productive learning environment based on academic integrity, honesty, and mutual respect and civility that will prepare all students to critically analyze and engage the world's variety of ideas, backgrounds, beliefs, and perspectives. We believe the teaching of current and historical events in the classroom should be clear, fact-based, and neutral, and presented in a manner to provide for the objective examination of multiple perspectives that will prepare our students to formulate their own opinions, engage the world on their terms, and be able to analyze, understand, and respect opinions that are not their own. To that end, WPS is committed to a curriculum that will create and build upon a foundation of knowledge from which each and every student is afforded multiple opportunities to achieve their full potential. The Watertown Public School System educational environment includes all individuals by providing the academic, social, emotional, and physical teaching and learning opportunities that are developmentally appropriate, objectively present multiple perspectives, and that reflect the importance of individual rights and responsibilities of living in a world of limitless ideas. WPS curriculum and those that facilitate it will strive to promote critical thinking in an environment that is safe and welcoming. The Board of Education's approved curricular experience for students shall relate directly to the education standards required by the state of Connecticut. The curricular experiences are founded and experienced in a safe and inclusive environment that respects and encourages multiple perspectives. A safe environment to provide students the space to exercise their rights to freedom of expression and speech and not to create any significant disruption to their learning space. The Board of Education committed to fulfilling the educational standards required by the state of Connecticut. The Board of Education will therefore ensure the approved curriculum provides for the teaching and learning of current and historical topics, events, issues, featuring opposing viewpoints in a manner that prepares students to fully and actively participate democracy and think critically for themselves. Accordingly, the board instructs the superintendent of his or her designee in collaboration with the district's curriculum committee to be responsible for creating and implementing regulations that support this policy. The implementation of these regulations shall be regularly reviewed by the superintendent. Guidelines, environment and conditions. Teachers and students have learned and practiced how to engage in facilitated discussions to engage multiple perspectives. The issue, topic, event with opposing viewpoints is connected to the state standards or the district's approved and adopted curriculum. Students shall be encouraged to provide and accept discussions that engage multiple perspectives during discussions, activities, learning experiences by engaging their right to the freedom of expression and speech. All students should have a balanced presentation and or access to factual, credible, relevant resources or sources, historical artifacts, primary, secondary resources that are related to the curriculum, related topic, and may include all or as many viewpoints being presented. Students will have an understanding on how to examine sources to identify biases that may be embedded. Teachers and students will engage in an academic examination of topics, events, issues that encourage open discussion and respectful mutual understanding. Topics will be taught, discussed, presented in an objective, nonpartisan, and impartial manner that facilitates discussion of multiple viewpoints. Topics will be developmentally age and course appropriate and or modified to be developmentally appropriate when able. External speakers, presenters of topics, issues, events with opposing viewpoints are permitted with the approvals of the building principal and superintendent. Topics and curriculum not specifically approved by the curriculum committee shall only be permitted with the approval of the building principal and superintendent.
Thank you, Mrs. Benante. I really appreciate you reading that for all of us. Okay, any comments on the revised policy? Let's go first. Mr. Wachowski.
All right, So last Monday, we had a great meeting. It was, it showcased what this board is about in a nutshell. The ability for everybody to express their viewpoints, and to get clarification on what the intent of this policy was. And I'd like to start by simply confirming, Dr. Villanueva, but that I understand it correctly, taken away from that meeting. And so what the goal here is to ensure that our schools, our classrooms are designed to be, for lack of a better term, a safe haven for students to express their thoughts on particular matters, to share their insights, philosophies, and things like that without fear of backlash. Thank you. Is that in a nutshell? That's what the focus was.
That is, and that is definitely part of it. The other part of it is, as well as the students, because we know in a classroom, there's what they're looking at and what they're exploring. And what is presented to them is also presented in the same manner, of a way in which we see, here's how it's presented in the standards. There can be 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 different ways of looking at this topic, depending on what you're talking about. And so now that we have taken a look at all of that, the students are then in an environment where this conversation can be facilitated so that people can have their own differing opinions in a respectful, mutual way to be able to discuss those thoughts.
So my first question is, I thought something like that is inherent in schools, that students should be able to have the ability to ask the questions that they want to ask, give the perspective that they have, without backlash or retribution. In theory, listen, we're talking kids. We know that, sometimes they don't have a filter, right? But the intent is there to have a safe area for our students to engage how they see appropriate. So I guess my first question is, do we need a policy for that? Or is that more of a professional development thing where we help our teachers and staff have the skills and tools to facilitate those discussions, regardless of what's being taught, but being able to, work through those, even the word conflict resolution came to mind, right? Because depending on the topic, you could have student A over here and student B over here, right? Are our teachers equipped with the tools to deal with that and create and maintain a learning environment?
I want to address that question. Again, no, I agree. This is something that we inherently do. But I think what this policy offers us is that we will now inherently do it consistently across every single classroom in every single one of our schools. It also clearly states what we mean by civility, what we mean by a multiple perspective, what we mean by the environment and how we facilitate this conversation. When it's in writing, then we have the opportunity to say, here's the baseline, there's no wishy-washiness of it. And then there are, you see on the second page, the guidelines that start ultimately to talk about the conditions. And then yes, there will be PD that goes with this. But I do think there needs to be a policy. And I think it would be important because it's also something that as district, we call it a safe haven. I truly believe every single one of our classrooms, every single one of our buildings is a safe haven for every single one of our students. Sometimes our students are not the same person they are here at school, but they are at home. And being in school sometimes can be a moment of respite for our students. And if we also have a policy that says we're also going to provide this environment for you too, and it's in writing, then they really know they have a place they can come to and have facilitated conversation and really share those thoughts in a safe way.
Okay, thank you. So part two to that then goes to the other side of the table, which is the teachers, right? And I do have issue still with the design of the policy, as I think it is still broad and gray in the areas of the teaching of multiple perspectives. I think that it does open it up to, to interpretation, that it is okay to have different interpretations. And we're not talking, if they're teaching the Civil War, here's the North and here's the South, right? That's not different. I don't think that's the different perspectives that we're talking about. And if it is, we just need to clarify what different perspectives are. So I think we need to do a little bit more work in honing in on what it means for our teachers, and avoiding the injection of personal, political, and social viewpoints, in the classrooms.
But isn't that what is I guess the only thing I want to add to what you're saying is, do you feel it's clear in here that teachers cannot inject their personal opinions on matters that may have multiple?
Yes, I mean, I think, and even if it's, I mean, other than putting that exact sentence in here of, you will not state your personal opinion. I mean, that's ultimately what a facilitated discussion is. We've learned it, we've practiced it, as we're saying, that it has to be connected to the state standards. Of that nature, sort of as fragmented sentences, but yeah.
So I do have my committee report, but we did talk last week, and we did come to an understanding of what this policy is about, but that was one of our concerns. And I don't feel that the teachers, we have great teachers, don't think, but there is a problem with that. So this policy, as it's written still, I don't think helps that.
So
because there is that problem, and I do think.
Right. So maybe we're, and I see that Miss Eastman's hand is up there as well. Okay, so she's next. So I know we discussed that like the consequences are not written in this policy of what would happen to someone, because it's not really meant to be a disciplinary policy.
That's what
or
Right.
no.
Right.
So
well, we did talk about if it wasn't a policy though, and they were teaching their beliefs in their
right.
Then there has to be a conversation.
Sure. Well, building administration would need to take care of that.
But
absolutely.
There's nothing in here that says. What about other comments?
So that's where I think we discussed though the difference between policy and regulation. So I think that's fine. I think so again, but the policy is not regulation, right? So all the things that can happen if this happens, or if this happens, or if that happens, all the causal.
But it is happening.
I understand that's what you're saying, but again, if this is kind of looked at as the ideal and as the expectation of where we're going to, then if it is happening, then we have to address it. And we do as professional learning, or it's administration talks to them maybe in a consequential kind of manner. But this is not meant to be a punitive document. It's meant to be kind of the ideal of where we're heading to.
And I understand that, but you can't. So if somebody is doing that, you can't address them and then say it's in here and it's not. Right. You know what? Wait, I just want to say something. We had a great curriculum instruction meeting on Monday. Very respectful. This is a communication that we're trying to get something right here for our students. So I don't need applause, because we're having a conversation about how we need to figure this out, and that's just a respectful way that we need to be. So nobody's right or wrong here. We're just trying to figure it out what's best for the kids.
So Kathy, would you be, if item F, where it says that topics will be taught, discussed, presented in an objective, nonpartisan, and impartial manner that facilitates discussion of multiple viewpoints, if there was something on there that you're talking about having something,
I think a little bit more specific, like so when we talk, just if I could read a little bit, when we talked when we had our meeting, I think And you know, I think it was the timing of it all, and I did mention the critical race theory at the meeting because that was the timing of everything, and I think we were all a little bit confused about the policy and that. So we did talk and we have a good understanding now about what this policy is about, but I do think because there is a lot of, especially with things that have been happening lately, in our world, that we need to be a little bit more specific about not letting our personal beliefs or opinions alter other children's.
Sure, and I think that's where we talked about, well, I had suggested, I was asking the Board of Education not to conflate what's happening in the media to what we're doing here in policymaking. Because even if it seems that timing is coming together, it's not about critical race theory here. And I'm just kind of paraphrasing what we discussed last day we were together. So although one may want to conflate the two things here, I think that is not.
Right, which was good because we needed to clarify that.
Right,
And I think we did. And
There's a
we did
lot of
clarify
language that was eliminated as a result of that conversation.
And we clarified that, but I still think that you need to have something a little bit more specific in there about opinion. And even if it, it says here, what's what we said, right? Leslie, topics, maybe we just need to be a little bit more specific with, staff, teachers and staff will teach in an objective, nonpartisan, non-biased way, or present the material. Maybe not topics, but teachers and staff will present the material in a non-objective, non-partisan, non-biased way.
So just adding, if I'm looking at the sentence, you're saying, teachers will facilitate the topics in a,
Facilitate was the word that we used too last week. I mean,
will be taught and presented, and then continue the language as it stands.
teachers will facilitate. I don't know, what does everyone else think? I just think,
Let's
but
let,
I think that was our,
we should
let's let everybody digest,
Sure.
everybody's comments, and then we can, go back from there. We're gonna go to Mrs. Eastman and then to Mrs. Hill. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. I don't know if okay. So, thank you for letting me have a chance to talk. I think I do like this policy, and I think that that primarily it's a teaching and learning policy. So it says right, the first sentence is provides guidelines for teaching and learning of historical and current events using multiple perspectives. And I did mention last week that this isn't a new thing, and I know that we talked about like the confusion of the critical race theory and the timing of this, but the State Board of Education has worked on this since 2011. So there has been a need to start providing teaching and learning guidelines for teachers to properly teach, to do all the things that this says. I don't think that I didn't even think there should be any revisions at all, but the ones that were made seem to be adequate. But I really don't want to, it's like I said, it's primarily a teaching and learning policy. So that means it's for educators and staff, written by educational professionals. And I don't want to blur the lines between the function of a teaching and learning policy with, say, a curriculum committee. And I really am a little bit concerned about getting too close to the telling teachers how to teach kind of language, because I think that we have qualified professionals writing our policies, reviewing the policies, knowing what our particular district and staff requires. And I think that I don't want to get too close into starting to sort of managing what our teachers can teach. That sounds a little bit too much like censorship to me. And I don't think that that's anything we want to start getting close to. So I like the policy. I would like to see it. As far as the confusion on the parents' part, I think that it's equally our responsibility to make that clear, but not by changing our policy, but by having maybe some, an FAQ or a Q&A session or something like that. I mean, I think that would be perfectly reasonable to do that, but to not mix the two functions, and to continue to keep the teaching and learning policy, which has the guidelines for our teachers, in a way that provides the support, provides that professional development, and continues to keep the conversation going and the critical thinking and the conversation, so that all of our students feel safe, that they can talk about what they want to talk about. So thank you for.
Thank you, Mrs. Eastman. Mrs. Wilk.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the revisions. I do appreciate it. I think it's going in the right direction, but I want to go off of what Mrs. Rinaldi was saying. I can see it. We all had the privilege, and we had a fantastic meeting, and we had fantastic conversations, because maybe this is an opportunity for us to see where cracks can be, or where it is gray, where the outside does not understand. We had that opportunity to be at the table because we did have questions, and it was a fantastic meeting. And I appreciate this. But just like Mrs. Rinaldi said, there is some, and I'm not trying to say we have to tell teachers exactly, but maybe if we have it written a little bit better, clearer, with some revisions to say, to be ahead of it before. We don't need it to go to a principal level or a building, whatever, for a teacher to, unfortunately, maybe misstep or say something wrong, and then we have to go back to this policy and like, no, but only in this area right here in the little gray. You see what I'm saying? So maybe if it's more in their face, then it doesn't have to get to that level. Does that make sense? I don't know. I do appreciate this. I appreciate everybody who put effort in this, but I do think that it does need to be tweaked a little bit more, just to have a better understanding. Again, we had this fantastic opportunity.
So you're talking about, when you talk about tweaks, I want to make sure we're specific as to what you're recommending. So on item F, are you comfortable with adding the language that Mrs. Rinaldi talked about in item F? And is that satisfactory to you? Or are there other areas where you feel the policy should be?
I mean, there's other areas where I was just, concerned, like even in regards to, accordingly, the board instructs the superintendent and doesn't, well, this was slash here. Are the superintendent and the building principal, are they the end all, or will you guys check in with the Board of Education or curriculum instruction committee or policy and labor committee at all, or is it?
But we know that all curriculum goes through a process, and just
maybe
the board.
Yeah. Over here. Okay. All right. That was my only question.
That's the
That's the only thing that I was saying, and then what Mrs. Rinaldi was saying. And someone was saying on that, just a little bit more clear, not to tell teachers, not trying to put them in front, not telling them how to teach, just, I know it to know this, but it's just, it's in the,
And to Ms. Eastman's point about all kids feeling safe, they're not all going to feel safe if teachers are not letting them feel comfortable about speaking their opinions or because of their values, if they present their values, their opinions, no matter what side of that.
But vice versa, right? It can go either way, for
Right,
teacher or for student.
Yes.
Right.
No matter what feelings a teacher has, the student cannot feel comfortable if they're giving their opinions.
Mrs. Hosking, what's your name, please?
I just want to say that maybe we're asking, maybe it's really two separate things. That the policy as it stands with the intent that we understand it to be, and the standards that we want to set in terms of that non-biased, objective, safe space for kids is one part. But trying to then figure out how to put in kind of that, I don't know if you use the word punitive, but that, I don't know that that's what goes into a policy. I think that there needs to be the policy, and then there needs to be maybe a separate document or an understanding, a written understanding of this is the expectation. And I know there's guidelines written here, but I'm not certain, but the more that we go back and read it, and I myself have done that, I'm not sure that that's what this was designed to do. And I'm not sure if that's the best way to do both things that we want. So I just would be interested in hearing people's feedback on that.
All right, before we get the feedback, I just want to mention in terms of the state laws that govern boards of education, in terms of what board members' authority as individuals and as a whole are, and they do not include anything related to what's under the purview of the superintendent and her team in regards to disciplinary action, except where we already see it in student policies and so forth. So we don't, as a board, have any authority over how those things are handled. We know we create policy that they then have to follow. And under the direction of our CEO of the district, our superintendent, they have to create the administrative regulations as to what the expectations are following it, provide the professional development. And when we create a policy, it's the board also saying we are committed to providing the resources financially to allow the district to enact this policy, which, to Kathy's point about professional development and everything else. But in terms of getting into the weeds of, I think somebody used the word punitive, it's just not within our purview at all. It isn't. So even if we put language in a policy, the policy would not, we don't have the authority to put those types of things into play. That would be under the purview of the superintendent.
And I think the original intent here, and I can't remember who said it, I think it might have been Mr. Flaherty, it was about stating what it is that we do. What is it that we do? Because that's really what we're trying to do, ultimately what it is. So, yeah, that's really what I have to say about that. Just clearly stating what it is that we do in class.
And would you, if the word guideline was replaced with expectation, would that satisfy some of your concerns in terms of how clear it is and what this is what we're expecting?
I think you're just explaining about, your explanation, I think, best answers my question. And what is it that we're expecting this to do? And so, we could talk back and forth about whether or not we need to be more specific on this item or that item, but if that isn't what a policy can contain, then I think that's clear.
And I think for every policy that we have, because it's a board policy, if it's not followed, action is taken, whether it's, has to do with employee or procedure or anything, whether it needs more professional development or there's something disciplinary or it's just, a new product that we have to buy that better addresses the needs based on what our policy says we should be doing. But again, the policy, because the board has enacted the policy, that is now what the superintendent and the district is required to do. And that's how, if we take every single one of our policies, that's pretty much what it says. This is what the district expects. Some of them are based on laws and statutes, and some of them are individualized for every town. Mr. Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of building on that, it would seem to me like, and I really regret I wasn't able to be at the meeting last Monday night. I heard very positive things about people who were there and the experience, and appreciate hearing about it. And I think this is getting closer to what we heard when we adopted it for the first time, from members of the board, from people who came here from the public. In a couple of ways, I like that on the first page, it just talks clear, fact-based, neutral, presented to provide for objective examination. I like sub F and all agree with Mrs. Rinaldi, Mr. Council, and others, and Ms. Wilk about ways that can be made a little more clear. Because we have the policy, what I don't know that we have here are in front of us the needs for accountability, the needs for supervision that take place in the classroom that aren't a part of this. If I understand the back and forth correctly, there are methods of accountability on our teachers and staff. There are methods of supervision, not just on this, but on overall performance and expectations and all the rest. And to the extent those aren't here, I almost was looking at this at the very end, it says corresponding policies. And maybe there aren't others that deal with disciplinary, the way we enforce accountability and supervision. But maybe just a little bit between now and when the vote is taken, just a little refresher for the board and for the public who's saying, hey, wait a second, I don't see enough accountability here. If it exists in other places, then that would, I think, help us make sure that we can answer that question. I'm all for supervision. I would be reluctant if our debate on this and action on this were to go from supervision to suspicion, generalized suspicion of teachers, and I don't think that's the case. But I think I've only been on this board less than a year. I've heard cases where people have said something went wrong. We just heard it today. And there's a process that's going to happen no matter what this policy says. So I just want to thank everyone for the input. We heard very loud and clear that there are students going to school that don't feel they have a safe environment to express their point of view. And that was the whole purpose for providing something like this, to say that it ought to be taught objectively. People ought to be able, students ought to be able to express their points of view and not get pushed, whether by anyone, adult or a classmate, into feeling that somehow it's wrong for them to have done it. So I just want to say, I think this is closer, and I think we can probably, with a little more information, get to a point where there's something that I think will be generally helpful and hopefully generate support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any other board members have any comments? Mrs. Rosa?
Yes. I just want to say, this policy 6012, I agree with Mr. Flaherty. I think that doing the changes have really brought up a lot of the points that we addressed. And if you look on the guidelines, the first under environment and conditions, the first thing it says teachers and students have learned. That have learned means that supervision probably has taken place, that they have gone through the guidelines of what is expected for the curriculum and how to go through the history and facts concerning all their their objectives. So I think that this is with a few little changes that this will will state basically what we need, what the teachers need to go forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosa. Anyone else? Mr. Malagudi?
To what everyone else has already mentioned there, I like the revisions that have been made in with the language to it, taking out some of the uncertainty and questions there. I also value greatly hearing from educators, their opinions, Rinaldi, Mrs. Eastman as well there. So I support some of the minor changes to the guidelines, expectations, a decent thought there. And then to item F there, maybe changing the language around slightly on that as well, but I do think we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I just clarify? Sure. It says that our recommendations to are not to try to catch a teacher doing something wrong by any means. It's more to protect them in a sense to not say anything that somebody might take the wrong way or I just want to be back there. We have great teachers and that's not a my thought.
2020. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Mr. Minkowski.
Madam Chair, kind of, to what Mrs. Kosky mentioned and what the intent of the policy is, would it behoove us to keep this to a learning policy? That's the intent, because we're getting hung up on the teaching aspect of it. And so does it make sense to make this a learning policy so that we formulate what it is that we want to document for the classroom, and then we deal with the other conversation elsewhere? I don't know where we would deal with, the inflection of personal views and things, but if the intent is to give students, that haven to be able to speak openly, then I think we can do that, and let's separate out the teaching part. Just a thought for consideration.
Dr. Villanueva, would you like to respond to that?
I have to think about that a little bit. Teaching and learning is a coupled pair in my mind. In a school setting. But I hear what you're saying. So I think I just have to think about it a little bit.
And if I may, Madam Chair, we're not going to solve anything tonight. This is a continuation of last Monday. And you're right. Teaching and learning do dovetail. They do go hand in hand. However, right, I think we can accomplish the learning part without diving into the weeds on the teaching piece. There may be components that we want to include, but I also think that we can achieve the intended goal easily by separating it out.
Any other comments that anybody wants to make before we move on in our policy discussion? So just for clarification, all board members are comfortable at the 10:25 Board of Education meeting. We will have an updated revision and a potential action item if we want to make revisions to the current policy on the books. Is that what everybody is looking for? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 2, as soon as my computer can start up. The third reading of Series 6000 Instruction Policy 6-24, the homebound instruction. When we were doing the second reading at our last meeting, Mr. Minkowski requested that some of the regulations be included in the policy. And Dr. Villanueva, do you want to share how you've done that here?
Absolutely. So I just added in here the bottom portion, which reads, in the 2021-2022 school year, the superintendent or designee shall also utilize the limited exemptions from in-person school and eligibility for and provision of continued educational opportunities during the 2021-2022 school year in response to COVID in applicable situations. So again, the homebound instruction can be set apart from COVID altogether. It may be just for our students who are medically unable to come to school. And so when you turn that first page, you'll see the typical form that we would use in the district for that scenario. But we also have some pretty detailed regulations for a COVID-specific situation just for this year. And it would sunset June 30th, 2022, the way it's written at this point. So we would have to come back to this and do an update to it to remove that last portion if there aren't any changes.
Any questions for Dr. Villanueva? Mr. Minkowski, does that satisfy what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we're on to item L, action items, adoption of items to be approved by consent. Do we have a motion to approve the Board of Education Policy 6024?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of policy number 6024, homebound instruction, as presented, effective immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to item M, committee reports. Mrs. Rinaldi, Chair of Curriculum and Instruction.
We have nothing.
Sure, sorry. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee had an informative meeting last week led by Lisa Feckety and Dr. Villanueva. There was a review of how Common Core standards drive our curriculum outline. Mrs. Feckety supplied us with websites based on each academic discipline to help enhance our understanding of those standards. We discussed the 2019-2020 audit, which helped us understand where our immediate priorities are, as well as where we have grown. Mrs. Feckety outlined what we've accomplished both with our curriculum and operational. Dr. Villanueva and Mrs. Feckety framed our next steps. I'm excited to say that they have implemented a Curriculum and Instruction Council. The council allows representation from each discipline to be involved in revising existing curriculum as well as creating and implementing new curriculum. A draft website was presented that will allow parents and community members to view an outline of Watertown Public Schools curriculum by subject matter with resources for additional information and clarification. The committee also discussed the misconceptions and timeline of Policy 1612. We had a respectful discussion on the meaning of the policy and the message it was sending to Board of Ed and community members, mostly due to the timing of the policy and the seeming urgency for its implementation. In the end, we all appeared to have an understanding that the purpose of the policy is for each and every student in Watertown Public Schools to feel comfortable and safe sharing their beliefs and opinions in a classroom setting. And the responsibility of staff and teachers is to allow and facilitate such conversations in their classroom without judgment or expressing their own opinions and bias that would prevent a student from sharing or causing an uncomfortable classroom setting. All in all, it was a very informative, positive, and professional meeting where each member of the committee was able to share their thoughts and ideas in a respectful manner regarding any curriculum questions or comments. We are looking forward to our next meeting when we will discuss SBAC testing and in the beginning of the year assessments. And I just want to thank Dr. Villanueva and Mrs. Feckety again because it really was informative, and even the layout of the upcoming website. I mean, there was a lot of time and effort put into that with nothing there yet, because we don't have it. So it was a very good meeting. So I want to thank you guys again for all your time and effort on that. Thank you, Mr. Rinaldi. Mr. Malaguti, Policy and Labor.
Yes, Madam Chair, we had an action item earlier on policy 6024. We are also in the process of scheduling our next policy and labor meeting this upcoming week. And we just had a productive discussion regarding possible edits to policy 6012.
Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Budget and Finance, Mr. McCoskey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, we had a budget presentation from Ms. Schovel, outlining student services and special education costs through Q1 of this year. During that discussion, we talked a little bit about special education is regulated by the state, unfunded mandates that we are facing, as well as the growing mental health. So I want to thank Ms. Schovel and Dr. Villanueva for their diligence in not only managing and monitoring the budget situation, but also keeping the board and the community informed. Additionally, Mr. Izzo presented on the Q4 fiscal year 21, and while we're waiting for the audit to be completed, we look like we're in good shape to close out fiscal year 21, and he gave an overview of Q1 fiscal year 22.
Thank you, Mr. McCoskey. Mrs. Wilk, Facilities, DPC, and Operations.
Yes, Evan and Mr. McCoskey made it a little bit easier. They did some of it. Like Evan had reported, Swift Middle School, PTO sponsored bottle fill stations, and that was installed on October 1st. The safety netting for the field is badly damaged, so they are looking at the replacement of that for our chain link fence. Hope School had a smart TV installed in their cafe. Judson had a smart TV installed in the main lobby. The window was repaired and a new coil has been ordered. And I believe the repair will be replaced before the heating season. And we have, like now? Yes, like now.
Although this week is quite warm.
Right, so it'll be installed. And we have for the cleaning continues at the Munson House, and all of our custodial staff continues cleaners cleaning about peaks due to the COVID-19 flu. And then the Watertown Town Hall has been tested for indoor quality air control, and the readings in our area are within acceptable range.
Thank you. So back to you, Mr. McCoskey, for governance and community engagement.
No report at this time.
Okay, moving on to item N, report from the board chair. I have 3 items this evening. I was contacted by teachers at the high school, Mr. Genua and Mr. Rosina, who are the union co-presidents of the Watertown Educators Association. They wanted to propose that municipal COVID money that is earmarked for the town of Watertown, not the school district, be used to study the environment of our school facilities. During the conversation, they cited two areas of concern. First, a spot in the floor of the Watertown High School auditorium that they suspected was mold, and a spot in the classroom at Swift Middle School, which they also suspected was mold. My first priority was to investigate the two areas they spoke of, and Dr. Villanueva informed me that they had already been addressed. Upon investigating, the district found that one spot was not mold and the other small spot was removed. Although the issue had been addressed previous to them bringing it to my attention, I did request that air quality testing be done in those two areas of the WEA's concern. The testing was scheduled with Works Environmental, and the report will be shared with the board. I believe the testing took place this week? Today. Okay, great. So we'll have that report soon. As far as their larger goal of requesting that the town of Watertown earmark some of their COVID funds to study the school environments, I directed them to speak to Dr. Villanueva about the presentation they would like to make and that it be discussed at the next facilities meeting. As a result of questions raised by board members and the community, I recently requested a memo on how the law views free speech rights as it pertains to teachers and their classroom environment. As a result, this evening, board members have received an attorney-client privilege communication regarding teacher rights and responsibilities under the First Amendment. I hope that board members find that information helpful as we continue to strive to be well-informed members of the Board of Education. And lastly, this evening, I would like to thank our educators, in particular, those at Watertown Public Schools who work with our students on a daily basis. Thank you. Thank you for your commitment to supporting our students and connecting them with other professionals who can and do impact their lives. Thank you for your ongoing commitment and dedication to our students and to their learning. The strength of our school district depends greatly on the degree of commitment our educators have. And their commitment in Watertown Public Schools is exceptional. While so much is happening outside of their classrooms, like in this very lecture hall, in our town, and across this entire country, I know that inside Watertown schools are educators who are fiercely devoted to their work, and they continue to inspire students every single day. They understand that education is such a gift, and it's a gift that they unwrap and they share and they cherish in every one of our schools, every single day. And at the center of that gift are our students who are bursting with knowledge and enthusiasm and questions and concerns and needs. I recognize and appreciate the length at which our educators are willing to go for our students, our children, and that amidst all of these unsettling times, Watertown Public Schools are strong, and they are filled with educators who continue to unwrap that gift every day in every possible way for our students. Thank you. Moving on to item O, do board members have any future agenda items or comments in addition to making this time? Mr. Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want the record to note the beginning of the meeting. I cast a vote for the adoption of the minutes of the special meeting.
Yes.
On the 23rd, and I was not there. So I think pursuant to Robert's rules, I believe, could you record me as having abstained? Since I wasn't here for the meeting, I don't think I can vote on the minutes.
And Kathy and Sydney as well.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Flaherty. Any other members of the board have agenda items they'd like to suggest or comments they'd like to make at this time?
Good Chair. I just want to thank you again, Dr. B, and for everybody who has taken so much time to talk to us and to go through this policy and make us understand. I know it's been very lengthy, and I really do appreciate you and all the administrators, the faculty that have worked on this and to have us have a better understanding. So I definitely don't want to take that away from you guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood, and thank you to all of our board members for being collaborative in discussion always.
Thank you. Moving on to item P, our last round of public participation. Any members of the public wish to address the board this evening, please do so by stepping up to the microphone. State your name and street address for the record, please.
Krista Palumba, 9 Cayuga Drive, Watertown, Connecticut. I was not prepared to speak again, but as you are sitting here talking about policy 6012, emotions are coming up from something that happened to my family personally. To collect myself. You're talking about the language in this proposed policy. Mr. Mikowski brought up having political and personal views added to the language about not having that teachers not express their personal and political views in the classroom. I unfortunately, myself and my daughter, had the experience of not one but two teachers feel it was okay to express their personal and political views in the classroom, not realizing my daughter has a different last name than me. Teacher used my name in the classroom and slandered me. This has been documented. And another felt it was okay to express their views, not realizing that my daughter was actually in the classroom as she has a different last name. The damage, I can't even begin to tell you, that happened to my daughter. Having a teacher talk about their mother in the classroom, talk about their mother's views in the classroom because mine were different than the teacher's views. So I feel that language absolutely needs to be put in the policy. It is very important. You have to realize the damage it does to a student and their family when teachers express their political and personal views in the classroom. Thank you.
I would just like to note that because Mrs. Palumba was so reactive in a positive way about her experience, that is part of the reason why it was important to me to put that in this policy, because I was fortunately privy to, or unfortunately privy to what she shared with you this evening in much larger detail. And it's stories like that and other ones that we've heard over time that make all of us want to make sure that that part is in this policy. So,
yeah, it shouldn't have been done.
okay. Any other? Go right ahead.
Genesis Alfonso, Leslie Drive. First, I do want to mention the parental advisory committee. That information, I'd like to have that as well. I'm very interested. When it comes to the social and emotional learning, and I just even think about the mascot and the issues and the certain opinions that are being spoken about in the town. There's people that agree with it, there's people that don't agree with it. And there's just other opinions that can be brought into the classroom that certain people agree with but don't. I just don't understand like how many times you have to come here and tell you guys. There's things that are in the school that are making parents uncomfortable. And those parents are here, they come and they're not being heard. Personally, I don't know if it's because we can't be explicit, but details about this curriculum, examples, I would appreciate to be shared either on the website, an email, in some form, because I feel like it's very vague. It's very vague. And it's not, it doesn't just have to do with history. There's also some, if I can mention, homosexual talk. There's also things, those are things that don't have anything to do with education. Those are things that have absolutely nothing to do with the curriculum. And it's personally, it's vulgar that you're allowing this content in library books, in the schools. So, the details are not there, and that's where I believe a big part of the communication is not lying.
Thank you. Any other members of the public present wish to address the board this evening? State your name and your street address for the record, please.
Esther Capuano of Lansing Road. I have a household, my husband's a teacher. We both have separate beliefs, different beliefs. And I mean, I know how it is to raise kids in a household, like, you know, with two separate beliefs. And it's not that difficult. Like, I don't know why there's policies, and I don't understand that. I don't understand. I feel like everything is being made so much more difficult when it shouldn't. If I'm married to my husband for 10 years and we have completely different beliefs, our kids are doing perfectly fine. But they have more anxiety right now at school. They do it in our own home. So I believe that there has to be a policy written for that. And it has to be. Because the way I see it, I see, even like the last meeting, we had the teachers talking, but they wanted to express their beliefs. No. I mean, you talk about it, yes, neutral, but don't make them uncomfortable. I have family member that felt uncomfortable in one of the schools because, you know, kids are vulnerable, so they don't, especially when it comes to an adult figure, that they're not really, yes, they're comfortable with the teachers, but they're not like mom and dad, you know, like they're gonna talk to us differently. So he still felt uncomfortable, and he really didn't express his beliefs because he's still a child. So I definitely think, I mean, when you go to college, yes, go ahead, go do that. You know, you're older, you know yourself, but when you're a child, you're still learning. Definitely put that into a policy for the teachers.
Thank you. Any members of the virtual audience wish to address the board this evening? I see Mr. Klostrom has his hand raised. You can unmute yourself.
Hey, how are you tonight? Robert Bostrom, 3 Oak Drive. I know we got a couple of weeks coming up until the election cycle. I don't think the town can convey how appreciative we are of all 9 of you who serve the community and look out for the interests of our kids. I know the past month and a half from being at the meetings virtually, they've been a bit hostile at times. And I want you to understand that not everybody in the community is like that. We appreciate you and we thank you for all the time that you volunteer for the benefit of our children and the safety of our children. I would have loved to have been there in person. Unfortunately, from viewing the virtual audience, it's clear that many people don't know how to wear masks, and I have a surgery in 2 days, so I can't risk COVID. Masks go over the nose, which I know it's difficult to understand. But besides the point, I want to thank all 9 members of the council for your dedication to our children. My wife and I don't always agree with everything that you do, but we appreciate you having the safety and concern for the benefit of our kids. I've heard tonight the talk about the policy about social and emotional learning. One of our daughters right now is in one of the elementary schools that implemented the plan. She comes home and says that she actually loves that special. It has nothing to do with what some people in the community have been referencing the past couple of meetings about CRT. I've asked people in the community to ask me references where CRT is in our classrooms, and they can't even actually give examples because it doesn't exist. Last thing that I want to say is Councilperson Murkowski, my wife and I support you. We appreciate what you've been doing. It seems tonight your comments on that policy are a bit disingenuous, though. You supported the policy, and then about a month ago, you didn't want to implement the policy because it wasn't implemented properly. And then tonight you discussed, is there even a need for the policy rather than just having our teachers being trained properly? So it's one or the other. Don't flip off on the issue. Lastly, I want to commend and thank Leslie for her effort, time that she's done for this town. You can't understand how much we appreciate everything you've done for our community and our children. You serve tirelessly for everybody, and we just want to make sure that you understand that the vocal majority, not the minority that are showing up at these meetings, appreciate everything that you've done for us. So thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Any other members of the virtual audience wish to address the board this evening? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on in our agenda. We have a motion to go into executive session regarding Watertown Public School safety plans.
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of a discussion regarding school safety plans. Attending the executive session will be Dr. Villanueva, Dr. Crotty, Janelle Gill, Rod McCuskey, Kathy Rinaldi, Brian Flaherty, Josephine Rosa, Jason Melody, and myself, Karen Hopkins.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Mr. Turner, we need to keep Ms. Eastman on screen, but everybody else will need to close out.
Can we just make an adjustment to that motion, including Mrs. Eastman?
Sure. To say the whole thing again, please. Okay. Madam Chair, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of a discussion regarding school safety plans. Attending the executive session will be Dr. Villanueva, Dr. Crotty, Janelle Wilt, Rod McCuskey, Kathy Rinaldi, Brian Flaherty, Josephine Rosa, Jason Melody, Cindy Eastman, and myself, Karen Hopkins.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoskin. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Valverde. Any discussion? All in favor of going into executive session?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are in executive session. If anybody wants to use the restroom, please go ahead and stay.
Not moving.
Jeff, is she able to unmute herself?
You should be able to.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. We can hear you too.
Okay, are we gonna stay like this? Am I gonna stay on like this?
You? Are you okay with that?
I'm sure. I'm fine.
Okay, that way we can see you and you can participate.
Okay.
Yeah, we just need to confirm, Mr. Turner, that nobody can jump back in, correct?
Only if they have an at watertownps.org account can they get into it. We didn't use the secondary,
You didn't?
no.
Okay,
No,
Mrs.
never
Eastman, would you mind if I called you on my phone and we did
No.
FaceTime or speaker?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so let's do it that way for security because we don't have the second level of authorization turned on this right now.
Okay, so you're gonna do FaceTime?
Whichever you prefer. I can put you on speakerphone or we can FaceTime.
Either is fine.
Okay, so I'll call yourself.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
I'm gonna see you. Your mom's gonna come out.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Close out Google Meet. I definitely.
All right, good.
I